I was still in the kitchen, still wearing the dress I bought for her wedding. It was soft blush, simple, elegant, the kind of dress a mother wears when she wants to be seen, but not overshadow. I'd picked it weeks ago, tried it on more times than I care to admit. Practiced smiling in the mirror. Practiced what I'd say when I saw her. But that moment never came. Before we continue, please subscribe to Granny's Voice and write in the comments what time it is where you are watching from now. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's shout out goes to Coney from Leesman, Alabama. Thank you for being part of this great family. Now let me tell everything. There was no smiling reunion, no tears, no necklace clasped around her neck as I whispered, "You'll always be my baby." Because she told me not to come. No big fight, no screaming match, just one short clipped phone call. "Mom, I think it's better if you don't come." Just like that, I stood there for hours that morning, the silence in the house pressing in like a second skin. The kind of silence that doesn't just feel empty. It feels pointed, like the walls are watching you wait for something that's never going to arrive. I made a pot of coffee I didn't drink. Wrapped the gift I'd planned to give her, the necklace I'd had custom made, tucked in a velvet box. I tied the ribbon like I was still holding on to a sliver of hope. Like maybe she'd call. Maybe she'd say she changed her mind. She didn't. The ceremony had already started. I kept glancing at the clock like that would change something. It didn't. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just sat down at the kitchen table, one hand clutching the edge, like I might float off the earth if I didn't hold on to something. The gift sat in the center of the table. I looked at it the way someone might look at a photograph of a ghost. Something once full of life that now just haunted the room. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch in the same dress, the fabric stiff and strange like it belonged to a different woman. And the next morning, a knock. I almost didn't answer. I thought maybe a neighbor. A delivery. But it was him. Owen, still in his wedding suit, though the jacket was gone, the top buttons undone. His face was tired, his eyes even more so. He didn't say hi. He just said, "Can we talk?" Before the dress, before the phone call, before Owen stood on my porch looking like he hadn't slept in days, there was love. Real love. Not the kind people post about with filters and hashtags, but the kind that burrows into your bones and makes a home there. The kind that feels like breath and fire all at once. That was me and my daughter. Her name wasn't always easy for people to pronounce, so we called her Sunny. She was my only child, born after 5 years of fertility treatments and more heartbreak than I ever let anyone see. I was alone when I gave birth. Her father had been long gone by then. But when they placed her in my arms for the first time under the sterile hospital lights with thunder shaking the windows, I swear the whole world quieted. She gripped my finger like she'd been waiting for me. From that moment, it was just the two of us, me and Sunny. Against everything. I raised her alone. I worked 2 jobs, teaching 3rd grade during the day and tutoring high school kids at night. I skipped dinners, slept too little, counted pennies. But she never knew that. Her world was safe, soft, full of books, sidewalk chalk, piano lessons, and pancakes on Saturday mornings. That was the one thing I promised myself, that no matter what I had to sacrifice, she would never feel the weight of it. We had our rituals. Friday movie nights with popcorn and matching pajamas. Road trips in our old station wagon singing at the top of our lungs. On stormy nights, she'd crawl into bed beside me, even at 15, and whisper, "Just until it passes." I never told her no. She was bright, curious, kind. She had her father's eyes, but not his silence. Sunny told me everything. At least she used to. I still remember the day she brought Owen home for the first time. She was 24, glowing like she'd swallowed the sun. I opened the door and there she was, holding his hand like she had something to prove. "Mom, this is Owen." He was quiet, polite, the kind of young man who looked you in the eye and listened when you spoke. He carried her purse without flinching, laughed when she teased him. I liked him immediately, not because he impressed me, but because Sunny looked so steady around him. Grounded. I didn't question a thing. When they got engaged 6 months later, I cried. Not from sadness, but because it felt like a new chapter we'd write together. I pictured us planning the wedding side by side, me helping her pick out the dress, walking through venues, tasting cakes, laughing until we cried over flowers and fonts and whatever Pinterest was throwing at us that week. I even started a little notebook, jotted down ideas, quotes, vendors. Nothing pushy, just a mom trying to help without hovering. I bought her a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a heart-shaped charm engraved with the words, "Always your mom." I thought I'd give it to her the morning of her wedding, clasp it around her neck with shaking hands, and say, "You'll always have a piece of me, no matter where you go." We looked at flower arrangements once, just her and me. She'd shown up at my house with a wedding magazine and 2 cups of tea. Plopped down at the kitchen table like old times, flipping through pages and circling favorites. It felt good. It felt like we were okay. That moment, just her and me in our safe bubble of plans and giggles, I held on to it tightly, not knowing it would be the last time she asked me for my opinion. After that, something shifted. I told myself it was just stress. Every bride gets overwhelmed, right? But the calls came less often. Our weekly coffee dates turned into maybe next week. Her texts got shorter, clipped, practical. Still, I didn't push. I gave her space. I figured she'd come back around like she always did. But somewhere deep in my gut, I knew. There was a moment, small but unmistakable, when I realized something was changing. It was a Sunday. Sunny had invited me to brunch with Owen's parents at this trendy little cafe downtown. I showed up in a soft blue blouse she used to love, hair curled, trying not to look like I was trying too hard. They were already seated when I arrived. Owen stood to greet me. Sunny didn't. "Mom," she said, flat. "You made it." Not cold, but distant, like I was someone she had to include, not someone she wanted there. I smiled through it. Wouldn't miss it. We Saturday. The server brought menus. I asked if they had vegetarian options. Just something light. Owen's mother, Vivienne, scoffed. "Oh, another one." Sunny laughed nervously, but didn't say anything. I brushed it off. Didn't want to make a scene. I was just happy to be there, you know. Owen mentioned they had just finalized the guest list. I perked up. "Did you decide on a florist yet?" I asked, pulling a pamphlet from my purse. One of my former students started a flower business. Her arrangements are stunning. "We've got it under control," Sunny said, cutting me off. Her voice was sharp and final. The smile froze on my face. The pamphlet in my hand suddenly felt ridiculous. I know, she said. Not unkind, but firm. "But it's really something we've already figured out." The table went quiet. Owen looked down at his plate. Vivienne raised an eyebrow and sipped her mimosa. I folded the pamphlet back into my purse. My cheeks burned, but I smiled. Laughed a little like I didn't care. "Of course," I said. But inside, something cracked. Not because of what she said, but how fast she dismissed me. Like my excitement was embarrassing. Like I was stepping into a role I no longer had permission to play. That night, I sat on my couch and replayed it over and over. The way she cut me off. The way no one at the table flinched. It wasn't just a misstep. It was a shift. After that brunch, things didn't return to normal. In fact, they got quieter. Not the kind of quiet that comes from being busy. Not the everyday quiet that life sometimes hands us. This was different. This was the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're being slowly erased, like someone's drawing a chalk outline around where you used to be. The calls stopped. The texts, one-word replies. No more "love you" at the end of our conversations. It happened slowly. So slowly, I could almost convince myself I was imagining it. But a mother knows. Even when she pretends not to, she knows. I kept trying, gently. I sent her a picture of my old wedding veil, lace soft as breath, passed down through 3 generations. I asked, "Would you want this as your something old?" She didn't reply for 3 days. And when she did, it was short. Going with something different. No thanks, no warmth. Just a period. I offered to help with the invitations, handwrite the addresses like we used to do for holiday cards. She replied, "Already handled." I suggested hosting a small gathering for her college friends. A relaxed thing. Backyard lights, lemonade, laughter. It's not really the vibe we're going for, she said with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. That smile. I still remember it. Polite, distant, like I was a guest in her life. One day, I stopped by her apartment with a small basket. Homemade cookies, some chamomile tea, and a box of little memories. Pressed flowers from a trip we took when she was 6, a drawing she made of us when she was in kindergarten. Our hands holding each other in crayon. Owen answered the door. He looked surprised, hesitant. She's not really feeling up to visitors right now, he said, not unkindly. I offered to leave the basket. He nodded. The box came back to me a week later, untouched. The silence didn't show up all at once. It crept in like fog settling in the corners of every room in my house. Until one day, I realized I hadn't had a real conversation with my daughter in over a month. No wedding updates. No mom, what do you think? No warmth. Just distance. Cold, intentional distance. I kept making excuses. She's overwhelmed. She's leaning on Owen's side more. Maybe Vivienne's saying things. But deep down, I was starting to worry. Not just about the wedding. About us. About what was slipping between our fingers. I began questioning myself. Had I been too much, too involved? Had I overstepped? I replayed every moment from the past year like a detective with a red pen, trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. Some nights I'd cry in the dark, door closed, the sound muffled by my pillow. Not because of what was happening, but because I couldn't understand why it was happening. I didn't tell my friends, didn't tell Pauline, because I knew what they'd say. That's just how daughters are. But it had never been this way. Not with us. We were close. We were us. And now I didn't even recognize her. The worst part wasn't being left out. It was being rewritten. A mutual friend mentioned offhand that Sunny had said, "My mom's just not part of this season of my life." That sentence, it cut like glass. As if I had chosen to step back. As if I had volunteered to become irrelevant. I went from being her anchor to being a ghost. But I kept pretending. When people asked about the wedding, I smiled, said, "She's glowing. So happy." I still bought gifts. Candles, slippers, little things she might like. I kept them in a drawer in my room, not sure if I'd ever get to give them to her, but buying them made me feel close. Some nights I'd scroll through old photos. Her first day of school, birthdays, the Seattle trip when she was 16. Videos of her dancing in the kitchen, singing in the car, sneaking up behind me to yell, "Boo!" I'd laugh, then I'd cry. Because it felt like mourning. But I wasn't grieving someone who had died. I was grieving someone who had disappeared while still being alive. And that kind of grief, it doesn't have a funeral. It just lingers. Then came the moment that broke me. Not with shouting, not with some dramatic betrayal, but with laughter. I was making lentil soup on a quiet Thursday. Something warm, something to feel like love in a bowl. Then my phone dinged. A notification. "You've been added to Sunnis Bridal Babes group chat." My heart fluttered. Maybe this is it, I thought. Maybe she's bringing me in again. I opened the chat. At first, it was harmless. Pictures of bridesmaids trying on dresses, color palettes, a mood board with fairy lights and mason jars. Then came the messages, dozens of them, from girls I barely knew. Roommates, cousins, bridesmaids who had met me once, maybe twice. But they were talking about me like I was a warning label. Stella said her mom's going to lose it if she's not front and center during the vows. Classic overbearing mom energy. Just let the girl have her day. If she wears white, I swear I'll scream. Someone make sure she doesn't do anything weird. And then, right there between the emojis and the snark, was Sunnis' message. She means well, but she's just too much sometimes. Everything turns into a guilt trip with her. I honestly don't have the energy. I couldn't breathe. I read it again and again. It didn't change. She said that about me. To them. It wasn't private. It wasn't a mistake. It was her. And they laughed. I sat down, the soup boiling over on the stove behind me, hissing like it knew what I'd just read. But I didn't move. I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't reply. I didn't leave the chat. I just read every single word, every line, until the pain had weight. And then, quietly, I stood up, wiped my hands on a towel, and left the group. I didn't call her. I didn't send a message. I just felt small, like I'd become a punchline in the story I thought I helped write. The next morning, I stood in front of my closet. It was early, too early. The light outside was soft, that strange hush of a day still deciding who it wants to be. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My pillow still held the shape of my head, damp at the edges, and the soup pot sat in the sink, untouched, burned around the rim. I hadn't even eaten dinner. Just sat there scrolling, reading her words on loop like a punishment I couldn't stop giving myself. And now, in the quiet of dawn, I stood staring at the dress. That dress, still hanging there in its garment bag, blush pink and soft like a lie wrapped in satin. I pulled it out slowly, unzipped the bag, and held it up to my body in the mirror. It looked beautiful. Still did. But I didn't. Not because I wasn't enough, but because the woman in the reflection wasn't invited to wear it anymore. I put it on anyway. I needed to feel the weight of it. I needed to look at myself and understand what she had chosen to leave behind. I stood in the kitchen again. Same chair, same spot. That ridiculous little necklace box still unopened. Coffee in the pot, fresh this time, but still untouched. I looked out the window, imagining the ceremony that would happen in a few hours. I saw her walking down the aisle, smiling. I pictured Owen waiting, nervous and adoring. The music, the flowers, the applause. And I wondered for the 100th time if she would think of me, even once. And then I stopped wondering. Because it didn't matter anymore. By noon, I changed into pajamas, slipped the dress back into the bag, and shoved it under the bed like it was something to be ashamed of. I curled up on the couch with a blanket that smelled like lavender and laundry soap and tried to disappear into it. There was no movie moment, no last-minute text, no knock on the door, no sudden apology. Just a slow, steady heartbreak and silence. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I didn't even cry. I just stared. Because when someone shows you that they don't see you anymore, not as a person, not as a mother, not as someone worth inviting, you stop offering more of yourself for them to discard. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't even angry. I was just tired. Tired of twisting myself into a shape that might fit into her new life. Tired of waiting for the phone to ring. Tired of hoping love would sound like it used to. And so I did something small, something quiet. I lit a candle. Not for her. For me. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat in the living room, letting the steam warm my face. And in that stillness, I remembered someone I hadn't thought about in years. Me. Before motherhood swallowed me whole. Before every moment, every decision, every breath revolved around being someone's mom. I remembered the woman who used to journal every night, who took walks just to feel the wind on her skin, who once painted for fun, even though none of the canvases turned out quite right. I remembered her. And I missed her. And right there, with a candle flickering beside me and the necklace still sitting untouched in its box, I made a quiet vow. If I was being written out of her story, then I would start writing my own. I didn't need a seat at the wedding. I needed a seat at my own table. The day after the wedding felt heavier than the wedding itself. There was no more hope to distract me. No more countdowns to pretend I'd be part of something. No more lingering fantasy that somehow I'd be needed. Stella was married and I hadn't been there. I hadn't seen her in the dress. I hadn't walked her down the aisle. I hadn't heard her say I do or watched her dance beneath the lights I once imagined helping her hang. I had been erased. It was a Sunday, our old pancake day. The kind where we used to hum jazz in the kitchen and flip strawberry pancakes in our pajamas. She danced barefoot, holding the spatula like a microphone, singing Ella Fitzgerald at the top of her lungs. I loved those mornings more than she'll ever know. But this Sunday, no jazz, no strawberries. Just silence. A silence so thick I could barely breathe through it. I wandered the house like a ghost, unsure what to do with my hands, my thoughts, my body. I picked up the phone twice, hovered over her name. Congratulations. I miss you. Why did you do this? But I never typed it. Instead, I opened social media and there she was, smiling in her wedding photos like something out of a magazine. Her caption, "The best day of our lives." And the comments, hundreds of them. "You look stunning. Such a beautiful couple. So happy for you both." Not one mention of me. Not one question about where I was. And then I saw it. A photo of Stella and Vivienne, Owen's mother, cheeks pressed together, arms wrapped tight like they'd loved each other for a lifetime. The caption, "My second mom. Thank you for making everything so magical, second mom." As if I'd been the temporary one. The placeholder. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred, not from tears, but from disbelief. I closed the app and walked to the fridge. Inside was the cake I'd made the day before. 3-tiered chocolate raspberry, her favorite. I'd planned to light a candle, slice it, toast to her alone in my kitchen. But now I couldn't even look at it. I pulled it out, tore off the lid, carried it straight to the trash. Didn't take a bite, didn't hesitate. Just dropped it in. And with it, everything I had been holding on to. I slid down to the floor, back pressed to the cabinets, legs folded, heart cracked wide open. And I cried. Not the quiet kind, not the polite someone might hear me kind, but the raw, breathless sobs that shake you from the inside out. I cried for the daughter I raised. For the bond we had lost. For every school project, every bedtime story, every scraped knee I had kissed. I cried because I had tried. I had shown up. And still, I had been left behind. Eventually, I dragged myself to the couch and wrapped a blanket around my body like armor. I stared at the ceiling for hours, not thinking, not hoping, just existing. And when I finally drifted to sleep, I dreamed of her. She was small again, maybe 5 or 6, in a sunflower dress, holding a daisy in one hand. She looked up at me and asked, "Are you okay, Mommy?" I reached for her, but she ran into a fog I couldn't follow. I woke up tangled in my blanket, tears soaking my cheeks. And that's when I knew I had hit bottom. There was nowhere lower to go. Only forward. The morning after the dream, I didn't move for a long time. I sat at the kitchen table in my robe, watching dust particles dance in a sunbeam like tiny ghosts. The house was still, not peaceful, just hollow, like the air had forgotten how to hold sound. I looked around and realized how much clutter grief leaves behind. Gift bags, tissue paper, wedding ribbons in a drawer meant for joy. A hope chest that had turned into a storage bin for what could have been. So I started cleaning. Not furiously, not like I was on a mission, just slowly, like peeling wallpaper off an old memory. I pulled everything out. Unused candles, spare champagne flutes, a set of monogrammed towels I never got the chance to gift. All of it into boxes, into bags, away. And at the bottom of one drawer, tucked beneath a layer of forgotten plans, I found the lavender box. The necklace box. Still wrapped, still perfect. My hands trembled as I lifted it. I sat down slowly, setting it on the table like it might explode. I untied the cream ribbon carefully, gently, like some part of me still believed she might call and say, "Wait, I want it now." Inside, the necklace nestled in velvet. Gold chain, heart-shaped charm. The words "always your mom" etched into it in looping script. But it wasn't just the necklace in that box. There was a letter, folded tightly. I had forgotten all about it. I pulled it out. The paper was creased, the ink a little smudged in places. I must have cried while writing it. It was the kind of handwriting I reserved for greeting cards and report cards, when I wanted every word to be just right. And I read it out loud, to no one, to myself. "Dear Stella, today you become a wife, a partner, a co-pilot in someone else's life. And while that is sacred and beautiful and worthy of celebration, I hope you never forget the role you've always had, my daughter. From the moment I first held you, I knew I would spend my life protecting you, cheering for you, and loving you in every way I knew how. Every late-night cry, every scraped knee, every whispered secret, they're stitched into my soul. You are my heartbeat in motion. I haven't been perfect. I've said the wrong things, held on too tightly, missed the cues. But never once has my love faltered. Not for a second. This necklace holds a piece of me, and of your grandmother, too. Her wedding ring was melted into the charm, so you'd carry both of us with you. Not because you need reminders of who we are, but because I wanted you to know the strength in you comes from somewhere real. I don't know where life will take you now, but I hope with every part of me that you'll always find your way back to me. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Because real love has space for both roots and wings. With all my heart. Mom. By the time I finished, I couldn't see the words anymore. My eyes were soaked. But I wasn't sobbing like before. This time, the tears weren't for what I lost. They were for the reminder of who I had been, of what I had given, of how deeply I had loved. That letter, it wasn't for Stella anymore. It was for me. Proof that I had poured everything I had into being her mother. Proof that the silence she gave me wasn't a reflection of my failures, but of something broken inside her. I placed the letter back in the box, but this time I didn't return the necklace to the velvet. I clasped it around my own neck, my fingers shaking. The charm landed just above my heart, warm, solid, mine. And it didn't feel like surrender. It felt like a reclamation. Like a woman saying, I still matter. Like a mother who refused to disappear. That day, something shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, no lightning bolts. Just a soft creak in a door I thought had rusted shut. I looked at myself in the hallway mirror, not to check my face or fix my hair, but to see me. Really see me. And what I saw wasn't a shell. Wasn't a woman discarded. I saw strength. I saw breath. I saw a flicker of someone worth returning to. I spent the rest of that week quietly rebuilding. Not my relationship with her, but my relationship with myself. I pulled a box of old journals from the garage. Flipped through pages of stories I used to write when the house was loud with laughter and crayons and piano practice. God, I used to love writing. I used to need it. I made tea, lit a candle, sat at the same kitchen table, and opened a fresh page. The pen felt unfamiliar in my hand, like I was holding a part of myself I hadn't touched in years. But I started writing. Not about Stella. About a woman finding her footing after the ground she trusted disappeared. About the beauty in getting back up. The words came slow, stubborn, but they came. And when I looked at the clock, I realized 4 hours had passed. 4 hours. And I hadn't thought about her once. Not in pain, not in longing, not in shame. Just me, my story, my words. The next day, I took a walk through the neighborhood. I hadn't done that in weeks. The air was crisp and leaves whispered against the sidewalk. Kids rode scooters. A dog barked in the distance. The world was still moving. It hadn't stopped just because I did. At the cafe, I ran into an old coworker, Nina, from the elementary school. We used to share microwave lunches and joke about field trip chaos. She looked surprised, then warm. Miriam, I've missed your face. We caught up, laughed about an old student who once tried to eat glue and blamed it on imagination. And before we parted, she said, you know the district's looking for part-time reading tutors again. You always had a gift with the kids who struggled. You should think about it. I smiled politely, but something in me sparked. Not because I needed the job, but because I missed being needed the right way. Not for who I used to be, not for what someone wanted me to be, but for who I still was. That night, I updated my resume. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't post about it. Just quietly reminded myself that I could still say yes to something new, something that had nothing to do with being someone's mother and everything to do with being me. That next morning, I made my bed. I don't know why that felt like a big deal, but it did. There was something sacred about smoothing out the sheets, tucking in the corners, fluffing the pillows. Like I was telling the day, I'm here. I'm awake. I still matter. I opened the blinds wide, let the sun spill in, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't reach for my phone to check if Stella had posted anything. I didn't scroll through wedding pictures or wonder who she was laughing with now. Instead, I opened the window. Fresh air, morning sounds, the rustle of leaves. I brewed coffee, not out of habit, but because I wanted to taste it. I took it out to the front porch and just sat there, wrapped in a shawl, barefoot. No distractions. Just me in the world. That afternoon, I called the district office about the tutoring job Nina had mentioned. The woman on the phone sounded thrilled. "Your name still comes up, you know," she said. "Some of the kids still remember you." That made me smile in a place I thought had forgotten how. They set up a quick interview, said they'd love to have me start part-time next semester if things lined up. I hung up the phone, set it down gently, and whispered, "Okay, Miriam, look at you." Not because it was a huge step, but because it was mine. That same day, I cleaned out a drawer in my bedroom. The one where I had hidden all the gifts I bought for Stella. Candles, slippers, little trinkets meant to say, "I'm thinking of you." Things I'd been collecting when I still believed I'd be part of her wedding day. I sat on the floor cross-legged and looked at every item. Some of them still smelled faintly of lavender. I repurposed what I could, donated the rest, kept one candle. Lit it that night. Not for her. For me. Because warmth doesn't need a reason. That week, I started going to a writing group at the library. Wednesday nights, small room, a circle of strangers with notebooks and hesitant smiles. I was nervous. Felt like I was 15 again, showing up to a new class mid-semester. But I sat down anyway. When it was my turn to read something, my voice wavered. My hands trembled. But I read a short piece, a fictional one about a woman who loses her map and finds herself instead. When I finished, the room was quiet. And then someone clapped. It wasn't loud, wasn't performative, just enough to make me feel heard. After the session, a retired English teacher leaned over and said, "You've got a gift. Your words don't just speak, they breathe." I smiled all the way home, not because she complimented me, but because I believed her. That weekend, I volunteered at the local library story hour. It was mostly toddlers in oversized sweaters, moms clutching coffee cups, and a few dads trying to remember the words to The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I sat in the big chair, opened a picture book, and started to read. My voice filled the room, and the children, God bless them, they listened, eyes wide, faces lit up. One little girl, Ruby, sat right at my feet. She kept interrupting me to ask things like, "What if the dragon wants to be a ballerina?" Or, "Can the tree talk back?" She reminded me of Stella. Not the adult Stella with cold eyes and clipped texts. The real one. The little girl who used to crawl into bed during thunderstorms and whisper, "Just until it passes." After story time, Ruby hugged me, just wrapped her little arms around my knees and said, "You read good." I blinked fast to keep the tears back because I wasn't sure anyone had said that to me in years. A few weeks passed like that. Small steps, quiet victories. I bought myself a new bookshelf and filled it with poetry, memoirs, even a few gardening guides I'd once loved. I rearranged my living room, not because it needed it, but because I did. I hung up new curtains, lit more candles, started painting again. Nothing serious, just little watercolors of flowers and trees. Messy, untrained, full of color. Every brush stroke felt like a heartbeat returning. And I kept writing, short stories, flash fiction, letters I never sent. I also called the lawyer and updated my will. Not because I was feeling grim. Because I was finally feeling clear. I didn't cut Stella out. I'm not that kind of mother. But I included a note in the section about heirlooms. A simple statement about the necklace. Maybe passed on if the recipient demonstrates understanding of its meaning. Love without conditions, loyalty without performance, presence without control. Not a threat, not a punishment. Just a boundary. A reminder that legacy is not just about blood. It's about truth. That same night, I pulled out my calendar, started writing things down. Not errands, not appointments. Me things. Writing group, tutoring hours, a walk with Claire next door, the local open mic I might just maybe read at one day. The calendar began to fill slowly, like promises I was keeping to myself. And then something happened. A parent at the tutoring center sent me a thank you note. Her son, Marcus, had been struggling with reading. She wrote, "He says you're his favorite part of the week, that you make the words stop being scary." I pressed the card to my heart and exhaled. I hadn't realized how badly I needed to hear that. That I could still be someone's safe place. That I could still matter. Not for what I lost, but for what I still had to give. The leaves were beginning to turn. That crisp edge in the air, the one that tells you summer is letting go, started creeping into my mornings. I walked more now, just to watch the trees shed what no longer served them. There was a lesson in that. Letting go doesn't mean dying. Sometimes it just means making room. I'd stopped checking Stella's social media. Not because I didn't care, but because I needed to protect my peace. Still, now and then, something slipped through, tagged photos, mutual friends. One day, someone posted a picture of Owen. He was at a cafe downtown, sitting alone at an outdoor table. No ring on his hand, no Stella in sight. He looked tired. Not broken, just like someone who had aged 5 years in 5 weeks. I didn't think much of it. Not until the email came. It was a simple subject line, "Would you be open to talking?" And the sender, Owen. I stared at the screen, read it again and again. He wasn't asking for anything specific, just a chance to talk. He said he'd read the letter, the one in the gift box Stella never opened. Said he had thoughts, questions, regrets maybe. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I went outside, sat on my porch, and let the cold bite at my skin. I didn't want to rush because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't operating out of pain or urgency or the desperate hope that someone might finally see me. I was just still. That night, I replied, "If it's about truth, not guilt, I'll listen." He wrote back within the hour. "It is." Owen showed up on a Sunday morning, the kind of morning where the sky feels too clear, too soft, like the whole world is holding its breath. He parked across the street and sat in his car for a full 10 minutes before he got out. I watched him from the window, unsure if he'd actually come to the door. But he did. No flowers, no script, just him in jeans and a sweatshirt, hands shoved in his pockets like a teenage boy showing up to say sorry for breaking a window. I opened the door and stepped aside. "Would you like some tea?" I asked. He nodded. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd waited the morning of the wedding. Same seat, same mug. Owen looked around like he was memorizing everything. Then he said, "She didn't open the gift." I said nothing. The box was under her shoes in the car. She forgot about it. He went on. "I know that wasn't mine to do, but something about it, I needed to know. And the letter." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. That letter wasn't written by someone controlling or dramatic. It was written by someone in pain. Someone who loved too deeply to fake being okay. I nodded. He kept going. I believed her. When she said you were too much, that you'd make the day about yourself. I thought she was trying to draw a boundary, but she was building a wall. He looked up at me. She's been different since the wedding. Cold. Disconnected. It's like she thought having the day without you would fix something in her, but all it did was open a hole. I watched him struggle for words. He wasn't here to fix anything. He wasn't here to speak for her. He was here to tell the truth. And that mattered. "Do you know," I said softly, "that she once told me she'd never get married unless I walked her down the aisle?" Owen blinked, his lips parted in surprise. "I didn't know that." "Well, things change." I sipped my tea. "Sometimes people need to become their own story," I added. "And sometimes they forget who helped write the first chapters." He nodded slowly. "She said something once," he said, "about how your love was so big it felt like a spotlight. She was scared of disappointing you, of never being able to love you back as hard." "That's the trick of it," I whispered. "We don't need our children to match us. Just not erase us." The room was quiet. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something folded. "I wrote something," he said. "I didn't know if I'd give it to you, but now I think I should." He slid the paper across the table. I didn't open it right away, just placed my hand on top and said, "Thank you." He nodded, stood up, and before he left, he said, "If I'd known what I know now, you'd have had the first seat." I smiled. Not bitter, just soft. I didn't need a seat, Owen. I just needed someone to see me. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, handwritten, my name in the familiar loops of her handwriting. Stella. I stood in the hallway holding it like it might explode. I didn't open it right away. I made tea first, sat in the same chair Owen had sat in. Then, with shaking hands, I peeled the envelope open. It was short, less than a page, but it carried more weight than any speech. Mom. I don't know how to start this. I've rewritten it 6 times. I keep thinking about what you'd want to hear, and I don't even know what that is. But I hurt you. I see that now. I shut you out of something that should have been ours. I did it because I was scared. Not of you, but of myself. Of falling short. You've always been strong. And I always felt like I had to match that. But instead of growing into myself, I pushed you away. I thought if I could control everything, the fear would go away. It didn't. Owen told me about the letter, about the necklace. I haven't opened the gift yet, but I will. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know, I see it now. Love. Stella. I read it 3 times. Didn't cry. Not because it didn't move me, but because it didn't feel like closure. It felt like a beginning. The letter sat on the kitchen table for days. I didn't fold it up. Didn't tuck it away in a drawer like a secret. I left it where I could see it. Read it again when the ache in my chest pulsed too loudly. Let the words settle into the air, soak into the walls of a house that had heard too many silences. It wasn't an apology begging for forgiveness. It was a confession. A mirror. And in some strange, unexpected way, that felt better. True. Because it told me she saw it. Really saw it. Not just the wound, but the woman bleeding behind it. That same week, I got a call from the tutoring coordinator at the school district. We've got an opening, she said. Full-time. We'd love for you to consider. It caught me off guard. Not because I didn't want it, but because I hadn't thought that far ahead. I'd been so focused on surviving each day that the idea of planning one felt foreign. But I didn't hesitate. I'll think about it, I said. But in my heart, I already knew I'd say yes. Because something had shifted. Quietly, steadily, like a tide turning after months of still water. I wasn't floating anymore. I wasn't just existing. I was moving toward something. Not away. That weekend, I received a copy of the will I'd updated. It came in a plain manila envelope. I didn't expect it to affect me. It was just paperwork, right? But as I flipped through the pages, I came to the line I had written weeks earlier. The heirloom necklace may be passed on if the recipient demonstrates understanding of its meaning. Love without conditions, loyalty without performance, and presence without control. I stared at it. Read it twice. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't spite. It was clarity. A legacy shaped by boundary, not bitterness. On Monday, I boxed up a few things. A photo of her in pigtails, missing her front teeth, holding a popsicle and grinning like summer itself. The first story she ever wrote in 2nd grade, about a unicorn named Willow who got lost and found her way home with the help of a talking moon. Her favorite childhood recipe book, the pages stuck together from years of floury fingers and chocolate smudges. I didn't add a note, didn't explain, just wrapped them gently and mailed them. A few days later, she posted a photo on social media. It wasn't one of the wedding. It wasn't Owen. It was a picture of a children's book, Love You Forever. The one I used to read to her at bedtime, night after night, when the world felt too big. Inside the front cover was my handwriting, to Stella, who made me a mother. Her caption read, "Some things take time to understand. I'm still learning." No hashtags, no tags, no public declarations. Just truth. Soft, honest, like a door opening slow and careful. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like the story had ended with me outside. The justice wasn't loud. It didn't come in dramatic confrontations or teary apologies on my doorstep. It came in acknowledgement. In being remembered rightly. And sometimes that's the most powerful kind of justice there is. It was a Tuesday evening when the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. Assumed it was a robocle or someone selling something I didn't need. But something, maybe instinct, maybe hope, made me swipe to answer. "Hi, Mom." That voice. Soft, fragile, hesitant. I hadn't heard it in months, but I'd know it anywhere. It was Stella. I didn't speak right away. I let the silence hold us for a second. She cleared her throat. I don't know if I should have called." "You already did," I said gently. "So, go ahead." Another pause. Then she said, "Thank you for the package. I cried when I opened it. I didn't think I would, but, yeah." I smiled. Just a little. "They're just pieces of our life. You don't have to do anything with them." "But I want to," she replied, her voice steadier now. "I want to remember. I want to understand what I forgot. Or ignored." I let her words settle between us. This wasn't the time to rush in. Not the time to patch or plaster or rescue. "I read the letter again," she said. "The one in the necklace box. I finally read it. And I couldn't stop crying. Not just because of what you wrote, but because I realized," her voice cracked. "I realized how long it's been since I saw you. You. Not just as my mother, but as Miriam." That name. Miriam. It landed like a bell inside me. "You don't owe me anything," I said softly. "This call, it's not a door you have to walk through. Not unless you truly want to." "I do," she said. No hesitation this time. "I'm not ready to come over yet or talk about everything, but I want to start somewhere. Maybe lunch. Neutral ground." "Of course," I said. "You name the place." "There's that cafe near the bookstore," she said. "Maple and Pine. They still have those cinnamon rolls." "They do," I said, smiling. "You used to order them with extra glaze." "Still do," she said. And for the first time in months, I heard her smile. We didn't fix everything over that phone call. There were still miles to walk, wounds to tend. But we'd taken a step. Not back to what was. Forward into what might be. And that was enough. I arrived at Maple and Pine 10 minutes early. I'd been there dozens of times over the years. Birthday brunches, lazy Saturday mornings, study breaks where I'd watch her scribble in a notebook between sips of hot cocoa. The place hadn't changed. Same brick walls, same mismatched mugs, same Ella Fitzgerald humming through the speakers. I chose a table by the window, ordered 2 coffees, and waited. I didn't fidget, didn't scroll through my phone. I just watched the door. And then there she was. Stella. Not the polished version I saw in her wedding photos. Not the smiling bride framed by perfection. She looked real. Tired, but softer. Less guarded. She spotted me, paused, then walked over. Her steps were slow, deliberate, like each one was a question she hadn't fully answered yet. She hugged me. Not tight, not dramatic, but real. Like someone who remembered how. We sat across from each other. The coffee steamed between us. "You look good," she said. "So do you," I replied. And I meant it. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photo. Worn edges, slightly curled. It was us on a beach somewhere, maybe Florida, wrapped in matching towels, sunburned cheeks, laughing like we'd just discovered joy for the first time. "I found this," she said, sliding it across the table. "I don't remember the exact day, but I remember how safe I felt." I placed my hand beside the photo, traced our faces with my fingertip. "I remember that day," I said. "You built a sand castle. It got washed away by the tide. You cried so hard." She laughed. A small, unexpected sound. "You told me," I continued, "even if the castle washes away, you'll always know how to build it again." "That sounds like something you'd say," she whispered, her eyes glassy. There was a pause, a moment suspended. Then she said, "I forgot a lot of things, Mom. I want to remember them. If you'll let me." I never stopped hoping you would. We didn't talk about the wedding. We didn't rehash what went wrong. We didn't need to. Not yet. We just talked about cinnamon rolls, about the bookstore next door, about how the cafe still used those chipped yellow mugs she used to hate. It was light, gentle, but underneath it was everything. The following weeks fell into a rhythm that felt neither fast nor slow, just steady, like a pendulum finally finding its beat again. She called me every few days. Nothing deep at first, just checking in. Sometimes it was about her new job. Sometimes it was about a book she found in a thrift store that reminded her of childhood. Sometimes it was nothing at all, just the quiet of two people remembering how to exist in each other's orbit. Once, she sent me a voice memo of her walking past a bakery. "They're playing your Ella Fitzgerald song," she whispered. Soft laughter in her voice. "Made me think of you." That was it. No grand apology, no performative gesture. But it meant more than any of that ever could. We started taking walks. Short ones, around the lake, through the park, places where the air felt open and the words could come easy. We didn't talk about everything, but we talked about enough. A leaf that looked like it had been dipped in fire. A dog wearing a ridiculous Halloween sweater. A poem I'd read that made me think of her. Little things. But healing things. One Saturday, she showed up at my front door unannounced. I opened it and found her holding a cardboard box. "I finally opened the wedding gift," she said. "And the letter." She stepped inside, set the box down on the kitchen table, the same table where I had waited on her wedding day. Inside were photos, old journals, childhood drawings. Pieces of her. "I thought," she said, looking uncertain, "maybe we could make a scrapbook. Not because it fixes anything, but just to remember it together." I didn't answer. I just pulled out the glue sticks and construction paper from the drawer. We spent the whole afternoon side by side, surrounded by memories. Laughter came easy. Tears came too, but it didn't feel like mourning. It felt like mending. One photo at a time, one caption at a time. That night, after she left, I sat alone in the kitchen. The scrapbook opened in front of me, pages drying, memories curling at the corners. One photo caught my eye, Stella, 10 years old, sitting in my lap, frosting on her nose, mid-laugh, a birthday cake between us. I didn't remember the joke, but I remembered the joy. And that was enough. I got up, walked to the hallway mirror, the same mirror where I had once stood, trying to remember who I was. I looked at my reflection, not for vanity, but for truth. I saw a woman who had been shattered, rebuilt. Not the same as before, but stronger, wiser, whole. I hadn't been waiting for Stella's apology. Not really. I'd been waiting to see me again. And now I had. She'd come back into my life, yes. But more importantly, I had come back into my own. Not as a shadow of a mother waiting for an invitation, but as Miriam. A woman who'd held on through grief, who grew through absence, and who found her voice again. Not through someone else's permission, but through her own. The next morning, I lingered over breakfast, still feeling the softness of yesterday. A lightness in my chest. Not elation, not quite, but something close to peace. The kind that hums in the background when you've stopped holding your breath. The scrapbook sat closed on the coffee table. I hadn't put it away. I didn't want to. It felt like a living thing, breathing with the weight of our shared history. I flipped it open again and ran my fingers across the pages. Stella's second-grade drawing of us, stick figures with wild hair and giant smiles, was crooked, but I left it that way. Honest. Just like the laugh she gave me yesterday when I asked her if she remembered our matching pajamas. "I can't believe you made me wear those flannel penguins for 4 years," she said, rolling her eyes. "You begged for them every Christmas," I'd reminded her. She'd gone quiet then, just for a moment, then said, "Yeah, I did." We were rebuilding something. Not the same shape as before, but strong and real. Later that day, I went to the library for my writing group. I hadn't planned to read, but when my name was called, I stood. My hands trembled slightly as I unfolded the page. My story was short, just 3 paragraphs, but every word carried weight. It was about a woman on a beach, watching her child build castles that the tide kept stealing. How she learned not to stop the water, but to teach her daughter to build again and again and again. When I finished, the room was silent. Then, softly, applause. Not loud, not thunderous, just enough to say, "We heard you." Afterward, A woman named Diane approached me. Late 50s, sharp eyes, gentle voice. That story, she said. I lived that story. We talked for 20 minutes. She hadn't spoken to her son in 5 years. No wedding, no explanation, just drift. She said my story felt like a hand on her shoulder. Sometimes I think the universe gives us each other as mirrors. She saw herself in my story, and I saw how far I'd come in hers. The days turned slow and golden. The trees were starting to change, their leaves surrendering with grace. Stella called me every few days now. Nothing scripted, nothing big. Just enough. Do you still make lentil soup? She asked once. Still over-season it with thyme, I'd replied. I always liked that, she whispered. I almost said, you never told me that before. But I didn't. Some things didn't need to be named to be felt. One morning, I went into the garage to dig through an old box of winter coats. Buried beneath them was a dusty envelope I'd long forgotten about. It was addressed to Stella. Written in my handwriting, but never sent. Inside was a birthday card from last year. A simple note, Happy 29, my sweet girl. No matter how far you go, you'll always carry my love. I stared at it for a long time. Then I didn't throw it away. I tucked it into the scrapbook, right behind the beach photo. She didn't need to see it, but I needed to keep it. Then came the message. Late Friday evening. The sky outside was the kind of pink that makes you pause. Can I come over Sunday? Just for coffee. No agenda. I stared at the screen, then typed back, I'll have the cinnamon rolls ready. Sunday arrived, crisp and bright. I swept the front porch, fluffed the pillows on the couch, lit the candles she used to say smelled like cozy bookshops. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. When she knocked, I didn't rush to the door. I wanted her to know she could wait for me the way I had waited for her. I opened it with a smile. She stepped inside, took off her coat, and asked, Can we sit on the porch? We hadn't done that since she was 16. Since she told me about her first heartbreak. I used to wrap a blanket around her shoulders, pour her tea, and let her cry without trying to fix it. This time, we sat side by side, sipping quietly. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her photos, then handed it to me. There we were, her wedding day. Not me, of course, but her. Owen, friends, candles, laughter. But one photo stood out. It was a shot of the gift box I'd sent. The necklace sitting beside the letter. I couldn't open it that day, she said. But I kept it on the table. I'd look at it every night for a week before I had the courage. I nodded, not speaking. And when I finally read the letter, she continued, I felt like you were still holding my hand. Even after everything. I looked at her, my grown daughter, no longer a bride in a magazine, but a woman weathered by her own storms. She took a deep breath. I'm not ready to explain everything, she said. But I want you to know, I'm trying. I don't want to lose you again. I reached over, took her hand. I never left, I whispered. We sat like that until the sun dipped low and the wind turned sharp. She stayed for dinner, just soup and bread, but it felt like a feast. When she left, she hugged me tighter than she had at the cafe. No words. Just warmth. And that was enough. She started stopping by more. Sometimes with a bag of groceries and no explanation. Sometimes just to sit at the table, scrolling through her phone while I read a book beside her. No pressure, no apologies. Just presence. It reminded me of when she was in high school, those quiet after-school hours when she'd crash at the kitchen table, head bent over homework, earbuds in. I'd be prepping dinner, glancing over at her every so often. Back then, I didn't realize how sacred those silences were. How much love could live inside ordinary minutes. Now I did. Now I cherished every one. One rainy Tuesday, she came in dripping wet, hair frizzing from the mist. She shook out her coat, kicked off her boots, and sighed. God, remember when we'd run to the car in weather like this just to grab donuts? I looked up from my mug. Only if they had rainbow sprinkles. She grinned. Always. Then something shifted in her face, like her smile cracked open something raw. I've been going to therapy, she said. Since the wedding. Since everything. I nodded. No surprise, no questions. She tucked her knees up on the couch like she used to when she was 10. I thought pushing you away would make me feel grown. Like I was untangling myself, creating space. But it just made me feel untethered. She looked up at me, eyes glassy. I kept waiting for it to feel good, to feel like freedom. But it didn't. It felt like floating in the dark. I reached over, brushed a damp curl off her forehead. You don't have to explain, I said gently. You're not on trial here. But I want to, she whispered. So she did. Not all at once, but over the next few visits, pieces came out. How Vivienne had made her feel like she needed to choose between sophistication and sentiment. How Owen, despite being kind, didn't really push back when she started cutting people off. How part of her still believed, deep down, that she'd disappoint me if she wasn't perfect. I made you my measuring stick, she said once. And I hated it because I kept falling short. But I built that narrative, not you. I listened. Sometimes I responded. Sometimes I didn't. Because this wasn't about fixing anything. It was about being there while she fixed herself. In the meantime, life kept happening. I got the full-time position with the school district. 3 days a week, I worked with kids who barely knew their alphabet but carried worlds inside them. I taught them sounds, yes, but also gentleness, patience, how to laugh at mistakes. One boy, Leo, used to draw suns on the corner of every worksheet. I asked him why once. So it's not boring, he said. The sun makes everything look happy. I started drawing little stars beside his suns. We built our own kind of language. Stella came to the library one Wednesday night. I hadn't told her I was reading at the open mic. She just showed up. I saw her standing near the back, no makeup, hair in a ponytail, clutching a tote bag with the faded bookstore logo we used to visit every summer. She didn't wave, but she smiled. And that was more than enough. I read a new piece that night, about women who reinvent themselves, not because they were broken, but because they were brave enough to outgrow what no longer held them. When I finished, she clapped. The first to clap. One Sunday, we sat on the porch sipping tea under a quilt. Stella pulled something from her bag, a small square package wrapped in tissue paper. I saw this and thought of you, she said. Inside was a mug. White ceramic, hand-painted with a quote in curly script, even when the castle washes away, you still know how to build. I stared at it, throat tightening. You remember. I never forgot, she said. By Thanksgiving, we were cooking together again. She chopped onions while I rolled out pie dough. We danced to Ella Fitzgerald in our socks. She hummed off-key. I didn't correct her. During dinner, she pulled out her phone and said, "Can we take a picture?" I blinked, surprised. She held it up, leaned her head against mine, and snapped a selfie. Later that night, she posted it with the caption, "Grateful for the woman who taught me what grace looks like." I didn't cry until after she left. And when I did, it wasn't sorrow. It was relief. One day, as we were walking through the park, Stella paused by a bench, sat down, looked out at the fountain where children were tossing in coins. She reached into her purse and pulled out a gold chain. The necklace. The one I had made for her. She opened her hand, letting the charm dangle in the sunlight. "I've been carrying it in my bag," she said. "Everywhere. I couldn't wear it yet. Not until I earned it." I didn't say anything. I just waited. Then she reached up, clasped it around her neck, tucked the charm under her sweater. "I'm ready now," she whispered. The holidays came with a softness I hadn't expected. Not perfect, but warm. Stella and I spent Christmas Eve together. No huge gathering, no extravagant tree. Just a small table, 2 plates, candles flickering between us, and a playlist of the old jazz songs we used to hum to in the car. She brought dessert, a pumpkin pie she had baked herself. "I burned the crust," she said sheepishly, setting it down. I took one bite and smiled. "Tastes like love to me." She laughed, and something unknotted in her shoulders. Later that night, as we sat curled up on the couch beneath a shared blanket, She asked, "Do you think we'll ever be the way we were?" I shook my head gently. "No. I think we'll be something new. And maybe even better. Because what we were before, that had been beautiful, yes, but it had been tangled, too. So much of my identity had been wrapped around her, and so much of hers had been trying to grow beyond me. Now we were learning how to stand beside each other. Not over, not under. Beside." In January, she joined me at the tutoring center one morning. "Just to observe," she'd said. But when one of the kids, a shy girl named Maya, got stuck sounding out extraordinary, Stella knelt beside her and whispered, "You know what that word means? It means something rare, something really special. Just like you." Maya beamed, and I watched my daughter in that moment, giving back the gentleness I'd poured into her. And I thought, there it is. The lineage of love. Not always perfect, but present. One evening as we cleaned up after dinner, Stella asked, "Do you still have the story I wrote when I was 7? About the dolphin who wanted to fly?" I grinned, pulling a drawer open. "It's in the scrapbook. Page 15. We sat on the couch, thumbing through the book, laughing at crooked drawings, tear-stained pages, ticket stubs from old movies, and notes scribbled on napkins. At the bottom of the last page, there was a blank space. Just one. "Can we add something here?" she pointed. I nodded. "What do you have in mind?" She pulled a small photo from her wallet, one I hadn't seen before. It was of her on her wedding day, standing alone. No bouquet, no stage smile, just her looking off to the side. Serene, uncertain, real. On the back, she'd written, "A day that was supposed to mean something else, but now means the beginning of coming back." I took a glue stick from the drawer. Together, we pressed the photo into place. Spring began to wake up the trees. The neighborhood bloomed in yellows and purples. I started gardening again. Stella would come by sometimes to help, though she still hated worms and didn't know a tulip from a daffodil. One afternoon, while we were planting basil, she asked, "Do you think Owen and I rushed things?" I glanced over. She wasn't crying, just reflecting. "Sometimes we think love is a lifeboat," I said. "But it can also be an anchor. Depends on where you're trying to go." She nodded, brushing dirt from her jeans. "We're in therapy now. Together and separate. We're trying. That's all you can do." In May, we visited Aunt Pauline upstate. Just a weekend. Fresh air, long drives, laughter. As we pulled out of the driveway to head home, Stella turned to me and said, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I squeezed her hand. "You were never mine to give up. Just mine to love." And I did. Not because I expected her to come back. Not because I needed her to say sorry. But because love, real love, creates space for anger, for sorrow, for silence, for return. The necklace still hangs around her neck most days. And now when I look at it, I don't feel the sting of rejection. I see a thread woven from generations, binding us not by blood alone, but by choosing each other. Again and again. Even after the hurt. Especially after the hurt. There's no perfect ending. Just 100 small beginnings. A Tuesday walk, a shared recipe, a voicemail about a song on the radio. Each one a stitch in the fabric of something new. We're not the same. But we're not strangers anymore either. And in the quiet hours, when the house is still and the air hums with memories, I sometimes whisper to the stars. We made it. Not back. But forward.